Hey, greetings, everyone. This is Ehav Ever from the Chronicles of Ehav Ever. Today, I have a very special interview. I'm going to be discussing with Abood Cohen from the Shomorani or Samaritan community some issues of Torah from his community as well as the Jewish perspective, and also the idea of of Torah Shabbat Peh or Oral Torah, as people say in English. So, Abood, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ehav, for inviting me here. My name is Abood. It's short for Abdallah or Ovadia. I was named after my grandfather, and I'm from the Cohen family. So sometimes people see this name, they say like, "Oh, like how is an Arabic name, uh, uh, you know, uh, attached to a Cohen family?" And the reason is simply because the Samaritans who live on Mount Gerizim, they actually speak Arabic as their mother tongue, but we still kept ancient Hebrew. So basically, I'm a tour guide here, and I have a shipping company, Gerizim Post, it's called. And I love basically talking about the community. There's not many people in the. I mean, I like there's maybe like less than five people who really talk about the community. So I'm one of those people, and I'm very proud to, represent the community because most of the people around the world, I mean, especially in the Christian world, Jewish world, might have heard about the Samaritans, but not necessarily know that we're still alive. Especially in the Christian world, they heard maybe about the terminology of the Good Samaritan, all those things. So when I realized that most of the world haven't heard about us, I started to develop this passion to talk about the Samaritans, especially when my uncle had this museum, a small museum. You wouldn't even call it a museum. It's just a small room under his house, which it had like a few inscriptions here or there, a few, maybe drawings and stuff about the Samaritans. But still, it fascinated tourists to come and see it, and it fascinated me to see those tourists being, in awe when they saw it. And I fell in love with learning about the community and the history of the Samaritans. And, after 15 years, I got my English better. So it started to, have more international guests. And, and now we're here, doing the podcast. So, yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about Torah. We have the first five books of Moses for those who don't know. So, as Samaritans, we believe in the Torah, first five books, but our version of those first five books is slightly different. There's like a few differences that we'll talk about soon. But we are basically a community that believe in the Torah. And also we believe the holy place is Mount Gerizim, right? So that's basically a small introduction, I guess you can say.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things I've always found interesting, a number of years ago, back when I was back in my 20s, I'm actually like 50 years old right now. I had started kind of looking into just, history of the region, just to kind of had a more balanced approach to, exactly how you face archaeology because, archaeology, there's so many different paths you can take with it.
Mm.
And I know years ago I came across the Samaritan community, and I think I visited bin Sadaka, who lives
Mm.
in Holon, once at his house, and we had like a very interesting conversation. And I actually was able to get purchase a copy of the of your Torah
Oh,
from him,
beautiful.
and I learned to read it. And
You learned
initially,
ancient Hebrew, how to read it.
right, right.
Wow,
But the
amazing.
only thing I didn't have until a few years ago was I didn't realize like some of the pronunciation. So, for example, I could read it, and I could simply like read it in the way that we, as Jews we read. But I didn't realize, like, for example, one of the difference, a number of differences in the alphabet. For example, I'm a part of the Yemenite Jewish community, and in Yemenite Jewish Hebrew, for example, the word chet is pronounced in modern Hebrew is actually pronounced het, almost like a breathing sound. But I remember finding out, like, wait a minute, the Shomronim pronounce it differently, and initially I didn't know
True,
that. So how would
true.
you pronounce het in
Het
Shomroni?
sometimes it's a. So if I
Hmm.
want to say, let's say Chadash,
Hmm.
sometimes I would say Adash.
Hmm.
Adash.
Hmm.
Chadash means new.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's just silent. So if I want to say month,
Hmm.
Chodesh,
Hmm.
I would say Adash. Like
Right.
Chodesh הזה לכם הוא חודש ראשון.
Hmm.
This month for you is the first month. I would say Adash הזה لكم ريوش Adeshin. Right?
Oh,
So
interesting. Yeah, I know in Taimani it would be la Hawdash Harushon, the Hawdash Harushon. Um,
so we have
and
the Ha a
yeah,
little bit. Yeah.
right. Because, for example, the Holom in modern Hebrew, which is more of like an O sound in Taimani, if it's like there's a difference between a short Holom or longer Holom. But it also depends on what Yemenites you're talking about because there's at least
For sure.
two different pronunciations amongst most Yemenite Jewish community.
Hmm.
Um, so there's some people, for example, with the word the letter Gimel in modern Hebrew. Some locations in Yemen they would pronounce it as Gimel or Jimel, and then without the dot in the middle, what's called the dagesh would be Himel. So
Uh-huh.
so yeah, that's one of the reasons
We
I
have other differences like the Vav. If I want to say
right.
Veya Umer,
Hmm.
like Andy said, Veya Umer, we say Uya Umer. Just U.
Right. Right. And that was
Uya
the th
Umer
that was
shi.
another thing that confused me when I found that out. I was like, okay, that I didn't know either. So I think that'll be really interesting when we get into the issue of reading the text. One other question I want to have ask you before we get into that point. I think that one of the things that some people probably don't know, there's a lot of people who've heard about the Jewish perspective about your community, for
Hmm.
example, which is either can be found in the Talmud in terms of or in, the Jewish, what's called the Tanakh. I think that there's a lot of things that both our community and your community have in common in terms of the Torah itself. Even within the concept of like what happens after the Torah, for example, in Jewish communities, we have the ability to include the books that we say are the prophetic books into a book called Tanakh. But generally speaking, the Torah is still considered to be something different. And I
Hmm.
know for
It's like it, so
Shemanim,
it was received on Mount Sinai was the Torah,
exactly,
right? So yeah.
exactly. So one of the things I would like to ask you is what is the Samaritan perspective on history when you get into like let's say from the time of entering into the land of Israel of Yehoshua ben Nun or Joshua up until about maybe I would say like the Assyrian invasion into the area in the
Good
exile.
question. Um, so listen, for example, you have to first of all, you said that our version of the Torah is the same. There are slight differences, yeah, right? Where
Right,
then the Jewish one. Well, it's just the same Torah. That's what
right.
people need to realize. It is just the same. However, if we put both Torahs aside one by
Hmm.
one, right, and we
Hmm.
try to, see every single letter, what's the difference? Like some people did that actually. They want to,
Yeah,
they want to see exactly what difference in every single letter, and they found out that there's about 6,000 small
right.
differences like these. Sometimes they make a difference of the meaning, but
Hmm.
most of the time it's just the same. I'll give you an example. Sometimes there's a vav missing
Hmm.
in the Jewish Torah, and it's found in the Samaritan Torah, like ve'etz pri osebri,
Hmm.
right? And that vav in the Jewish Torah is most of the time it's not found.
Hmm.
The reason why I'm giving you this example is because when it comes to Joshua, the book of Joshua, that's a whole different book.
Hmm.
Um, and for me personally, I'm still studying Joshua. We don't usually read it. It's just like we only read the Torah every single week, every
Hmm.
single day. Sometimes we just
Hmm.
read the Torah. When it comes to Joshua and other books, I know that Joshua is completely different than
Hmm.
the ones. Now, what happens after the entry of the Israelites? Sorry, no, there were no Samaritans and there was no Jews at that time.
Hmm.
Like some people say, like when the Jews got exit Egypt.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, you can say that, but if you're gonna go with terminology, the word Jewish or the word Jew, is connected to the tribes, the 12 tribes.
Right.
So not only the Jewish tribe or the tribe of Judah left Egypt, it was the 12 tribes. Uh, and what I'm trying to say is that when the Israelites entered the land,
Hmm.
in the Samaritan story, the first year they came to the land, they had the tabernacle, the Mishkan, already built.
Hmm.
It was already on Mount Gerizim because they already know how to fold it. It was in Aron HaKodesh. They already knew how to fold it. And then the chosen place was already chosen.
Hmm.
And when was it chosen? It was chosen when Abraham came. And
Hmm.
the first place that Abraham goes to when he enters the Holy Land, or Eretz Canaan, like it says,
Hmm.
was Shechem. So
Hmm.
according to the Samaritan belief, it was here, Shechem
Hmm.
or Mount Gerizim.
Hmm.
And he built the altar here. And when Jacob came to the Mount Gerizim, he woke up from the dream and he said, "Akin yashema b'makom ezeh wa naki lo yadati." Like
Hmm.
there's God in this place,
Hmm.
and I didn't know. And Veira, like, and he kind of got scared of this place. Like, what is this place, right? So what is the Torah trying to tell us? Like, what is this place that is so important that the Jacob, Yaakov, and the Nevi called it the gates of heaven, Shar Shamayim, and the house of God.
Hmm.
In zeki bet elwim uzesharasam. And the reason why I'm telling you all those stories is because the main difference really between the Samaritans and the Jewish people is this thing, which is the holy place.
Right.
And when it comes to when they entered the land, the Mishkan was already here. The high priest Eleazar
Hmm.
was here. He was actually buried near Mount Gerizim when he died. It's called Awarta, a place in Awarta. People go
Hmm.
to it sometimes.
Hmm.
And of course, up until a certain point, this is where we start seeing differences in what happened, like in beliefs of what actually happened when the split of the two kingdoms happened.
Hmm.
Now, in our belief, there were two high priests. Maybe you're sure you're familiar with the
Yeah.
story of
Hmm.
Eli and Uzi.
Uzi. Right.
Now, Uzi was the rightful person to be the high priest, according
Hmm.
to our belief. But then another person came up and to Uzi, who was also from the Cohen family,
Hmm.
and he was like, "Well, like, why should you be the high priest? You know,
Hmm.
like, there's no." He believed that he didn't have the right to be the high priest. That
Hmm.
the Torah didn't necessarily say that it's from son to son, really.
Hmm.
He said, and he also was charismatic. According, like I'm telling you what the Samaritan
Right.
story kind of
Right.
says. Like he was a very charismatic person who knew how to talk and who knew how to basically, get a crowd
Hmm.
and and explain to them things. And eventually, he took away two tribes
Hmm.
and a half, but most importantly, the tribe of Judah, basically,
Hmm.
to away from Mount Gerizim, basically,
Hmm.
to have their own set of rituals on Shiloh. On Shiloh, basically, this is where the second or the first temple in the Jewish history,
Right.
or I mean the first temple, basically, and it was on Shiloh. Sorry.
Right.
Now the story here continues is that we believe that we never left Mount Gerizim for 3,600 years. The
Hmm.
practices on Mount Gerizim stayed here.
Hmm.
There's archaeology that actually proves it. There's animal archaeology, the animal remains, kosher animal remains.
Hmm.
Of course, there's remains of gold, silver, possibly some bells that used to be part of the parchment of what the high priest used to wear. These kinds of
Right.
things.
Hmm.
So, of course, up until a certain point, there were two kingdoms, the kingdom of Israel in the north and the
Hmm.
kingdom of Judah in the south.
Hmm.
And the important thing to know here, in according to our belief, David, the King David,
Hmm.
came to Mount Gerizim and he had the idea to build the tabernacle, the Mishkan in Jerusalem already.
Hmm.
But in our Samaritan story and legends, it says that God told David when he slept here on one of the rocks here on Mount Gerizim, just like Jacob, he had a dream here, and God tells him, David, I am the Lord your God,
Hmm.
and this is the place of worship.
Hmm.
So David didn't build the tabernacle in Jerusalem because of that. However, Solomon was more stubborn to build it in Jerusalem and in
Hmm.
our belief, and he did, and he built the first temple. And mind you, like some people have to, focus on what I'm saying here. I'm saying temple sometimes, and I'm
Hmm.
saying tabernacle, mishkan sometimes,
Uh-huh.
because the temple inside it had the tabernacle. In our case, we never had a temple.
Hmm.
You know, the temple is the mountain; it's the whole mountain, and the tabernacle, the mishkan, was folded on the top of the mountain.
Hmm.
So Solomon, when he built the temple and put the tabernacle inside it, he made it permanent.
Hmm.
Uh, and then, of course, we have the story of Rehoboam and
Hmm.
Jeroboam,
Right.
where the son of Solomon, Rehoboam, was basically he had a lot of power and eventually even forced. He was also having power in the northern kingdom, especially concerning taxes, right?
Hmm.
Because the north was also involved in farming.
Hmm.
Eventually, the tribes revolt against him because he forced those high taxes, and he
Hmm.
told them, if my father treated you with sticks, I'm going to treat you with scorpions. Like
Right.
it's a threat that, okay, Solomon was also tough on you, my father Solomon. Now the
Hmm.
northern Israelites eventually were named Samaritans,
Hmm.
and the word Samaritan, I mean, some people call us Shomronim. We don't
Hmm.
use the word Shomronim.
Hmm.
We just use the word sons of Israel, Bnei Israel.
Right.
Now, sometimes we call ourselves Shomrim.
Hmm.
Hashomrim, and that
Hmm.
means the guardians or the keepers. Okay.
Right.
So, not to go too much sidetracked here, but like just one more thing is that eventually we have those two kingdoms, and
Hmm.
you have 10 tribes in the north, two tribes in the south, two tribes and a
Hmm.
half. The kingdom of Judah had the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Benjamin, and half the tribe of Levi. So we have
Hmm.
Kohens also from the south. The
Hmm.
northern tribe was also the northern kingdom was also huge. You're
Hmm.
talking about some people say up to 800,000. So Samaritans were also a huge nation. And it's hard to imagine because today we're only 800 people, right?
Hmm. Right.
So, so yeah, and then of course across the many years, across the many decades, a lot of people came to control the land. A lot of nations, sometimes different nations, controlled different parts. The
Hmm.
Byzantines were in the north, the Romans were in the south. The Assyrians exiled 30,000 people in the north, but
Hmm.
that's really small number. It's not really a
Right.
significant number to indicate that Samaritans are actually, not Israelites.
Well, I think the confusion that comes up with people because like I remember probably I think up until maybe like the 80s or the 90s that like when Israeli IDs are used to identify like what particular ethnic group someone's from, there was a point where I think it was like Yehudi Shomroni like was found on the Samaritan ID cards when and that I think on some level confuses people because I
Yeah.
think just to take what you said and kind of bring it in a little bit so that people can fully understand what it is you're saying. Essentially, for those who don't know, at one point, all of the people of Israel, in English, people say Israel, were called either Bnei Yisrael, or I think in Samaritan dialect, I think you guys say Bani Yisharel. Is that
Yeah,
the
Bani Israel, yes.
right? And that's essentially like saying that all the 12 tribes would have been considered by that title. Now, depending on what tribe somebody was from, you would probably be identified on that tribe. So, for example, modern day Jews, most of us, descend either from people who are specifically from the tribe of Yehuda ben
Hmm.
Yaakov, specifically, or anyone who was living in the region of Yehuda, meaning that in the region of
Yes.
Yehuda, anyone living there would have been called Yehudim. And
Perhaps
then
that's where some Shomroni came from because they lived in
right.
Samaria,
Or
right? So
back and
yeah,
forth. Someone who was from like Shevet Yehuda may have been living in the north at some point
correct. Yeah.
for whatever reason. Um, and I think that, for example, one thing that people may need to understand about your community is that when you say that you are, let's say, just using the term Bnei Yisrael, what tribes do your community say that you come from specifically?
Yeah, what remained of Samaritans today, the 850, we believe are from the tribe of Levi
Hmm.
and Joseph, right? So the two sons of Joseph,
Right.
Ephraim and
Hmm.
Menashe. So
Hmm.
my last name is Cohen, so you will know that I'm from the Levi tribe, or like the half of the Levi tribe, which
Right.
was in the north. Interestingly, also DNA evidence does support that.
Right.
People can look it up in Google and see how, we really have that
Right.
connection.
Fraternal DNA testing was done between Jews and Samaritans and found that there is a definite DNA connection, meaning specifically because sometimes people say DNA and they don't really understand what it really is saying. It's like saying that modern day Jews who were tested, specifically if they test, let's say, Moroccan Jews, Yemenite Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, Jews from different parts of the world who have a genetic connection. The same connection is found amongst the Samaritan community, meaning that we share a common ancestry going back, either to, you could say, 2,000 to 3,000 years,
Right.
meaning that you could see that something diverged, whichever side of the history anyone wants to take, that there's a connection. But simply when someone's saying, modernly, a Samaritan, they're simply saying, okay, someone who says that they come from the tribes of Yosef or the tribe of
Hmm.
Levi. And in modern days, when someone's saying a Jew, you're saying someone who either, let's say comes from the tribe of Yehuda
Hmm.
or lived in the region at some point of Yehuda, or was from the tribe of Levi, or was from some other tribe that made their way there, but because of the exiles that
Correct.
happened both in the north and in the region of Yehuda, essentially people survived, and then these terms come up over time, for example, because we no longer have a
100%.
national structure. So.
Yes.
And I think that's where people get confused because I've met people when I told someone I was doing this interview, and they were like, him Yehudim," like what they're Jews. I'm like, well, no, it's you have to think a little bit more historically, of where
Correct. Correct.
how the term became an overall term, so
Yeah, I mean, sometimes when I get asked like, "Are you Jewish?" I say yes and no,
yeah.
and the reason why is because, well, the reason why yes is
Hmm.
because Today, it's just used for anyone who,
Right.
follows the Torah and believes in the, Exodus and the whole
Hmm.
story of Abraham, Isaac. They just call him Jewish.
Right.
So I say yes, yeah, but at the same time, I say no because, like the word, you have to kind of, say
It means
why the
something
word
different.
Jewish comes from, and we're just not from the tribe of Judah. So it's
Right.
it's cool to know, those differences, I guess.
Right, right. So now what I'd like to do, and I know I'll probably still have to like probably do a video after this video to kind of explain a little bit more. I wanted to come up with some graphics, but I thought it'd be just too much to kind of pack into a video where I wanted to focus in on the text itself. So what I want to do now is to kind of show people on some level what it is we're talking about, because one of the things that's interesting is that for the Jewish side of things, we say that the split between our communities happened a bit later than what you guys say, for example. So as you described, the idea of that exists in your communities, the history is that the split happened during the time of the conquest of Canaan, or the land of Canaan, where we say that it happened after it was a conquest. So that's kind of just something that people have to understand, that the
Yes.
difference partially is because of a historical difference of views of like when this split actually took place, whether
Hmm.
it was earlier, a couple hundred years earlier, or a couple hundred years later. So now what I want to do is share my screen. And I think that this is something you'll probably enjoy because I don't think this someone has ever done interviews with you in this way. Let me know if
Okay.
you can see my screen.
Yes, I do.
Okay. So I'm hoping that everyone else can see my screen also when this is recorded. If not, I'll try to find a way to mix it in. But what we're looking at now is what I kind of say, like in English, there's a story of the tale of two cities, and I'll say the tale of two Torah scrolls. So what I want to do is describe one of the ideas about how we get to a Torah scroll. What is a Torah scroll and how do we get to it, from both the Jewish claim and also the Samaritan claim. So just to start off with, the Jewish claim is that the content structure, the structure, content, spelling, and spacings that are found in a written Torah in Hebrew were something that Hashem, the creator of all things, basically dictated to Moses, to Moshe Rabbeinu, and as we say in Hebrew, Moshe ben Amram,
Hmm.
um, and essentially that there was nothing that he added to the Torah, that Hashem gave him, everything that was in the Torah, and that's essentially the Jewish claim of how you start off with a written Torah. The next step of the story from the Jewish perspective is that this is before, of course, Moshe dies, that he essentially made 13 copies of the Torah. One copy was given to the Levim, and a copy was given to each tribe, specifically before he passed away. And then, just for those who don't know, when we say a Torah, a written Torah, this is an example of that. And I want to put my annotate on so that people can actually see um, where we're talking about, because I think that's for some of the listeners who'll be listening, some of them might not know Hebrew, and they may not know that, for example, Hebrew is read from right to left. So, for example, if someone were to open up a Torah scroll like this, a Jewish Torah scroll, and let me just move this out of the way. There, this is the way it would look. There's no vowels, no punctuation marks. It's just a written text in terms of consonants. And the oral tradition is what allows us to know how to pronounce any of these words. So, for example, one of the things that many people are used to in the modern time are like chapters and verses being written into a text, where a Torah scroll has none of those things. That's, in the Jewish perspective. And, essentially, in order to read this, a person would already have to know the language and know that this is and so on and so on.
I love that verse. Hmm.
Yeah. So then if we say, okay, well, what's the structure of a Torah itself? When we talked about the five books of Moshe or the Humash, essentially for Jews, it's Barashith. Let me see if they here. Barashith, Shamoth, Vayigro, Bamidbar, Devorim. And that's in Yemenite pronunciation. So now I want to say, and look at if you can describe, for example, using the same ideas that we just talked about in terms of the Jewish Torah, does the same thing exist for the Samaritan Torah?
So if you're talking about, for example, the structure of the
Hmm.
first five books, the names, first of all, we call them first book, second book, third book. So the book, the Sefer Rishon, Sefer Shani, most of the time we use that. Of course, we
Okay.
do have sometimes the words of Parashit,
Hmm.
and those, but most of the time we use the word Shani, Shlishi, the Sefer Shlishi. And in terms of pronunciation of like vowels, first of all, we also have this tradition, or the passed down tradition of how to pronounce the Torah, right? We we,
Hmm.
we also know, like for example, the nikud, the vowels of no, whether we say ba or be or b,
Hmm.
that came like the actual, science that came not. so long ago. It's actually
Right.
a new
Well,
thing,
let's get to
right?
this first because we're going to get to that in just a second. That's why I say you're going to enjoy this next part, I think. But I want to know, for example, if you see here, one of the things I think I understood from the people I learned from who were Samaritan was that you guys also believe that the structure of the text itself, the information in it, the spelling and spacing, also came from Hashem, and that was
A hundred
translated to
percent. Yes.
100%.
Because you have to know something like um it's written in the Torah that Moses gave the Torah to the 70 elders,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like Shabim Zakenim, Shvim Zkenim. But at the same time, the Torah also says when Moses complained to Hashem
Mm-hmm.
that he cannot do this, it's just too much on him.
Mm-hmm.
What did God Hashem tell him? That he will take some of his spirit
Mm-hmm.
and put it on those 70 elders, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do
Right.
you remember that verse, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that in our tradition really means that they have the wisdom from Hashem to
Mm-hmm.
know exactly how the structure, the
Mm-hmm.
content, the spelling, and the spacing, as you describe it, is made, really. So yeah.
Right. And one quick question I have before we move on to the next part of it, which is similar to what I showed earlier. Is there any kind of tradition within the Samaritan community of how to like write a Torah scroll? So, for example, let's say that you wanted to write a Torah scroll to be used officially in your community. Just in short,
Of course.
what would be the process of to make a scroll like this, for example?
First of all, you have to know we don't have a specific material.
Hmm.
It's just paper is okay. It's a clean paper is okay. Parchment today is barely used. So we don't have kosher
Hmm.
papers as long as it's a paper that is, clean and survives well,
Hmm.
it's okay. Second of all, it has to be handwritten.
Hmm.
So all of it is handwritten.
Hmm.
As far as I know, until now, there's maybe 12 books.
Hmm.
Maybe one of them was an exception of only them in the middle. You see the middle of the Torah,
Hmm.
the visible thing
Yeah.
in the middle.
Hmm.
That page we never change,
Ah,
right?
okay.
So we never read from this scroll. It's only used by the Chazan to
Hmm.
bless the people behind him and in front of him, right? Just like that, he
Hmm.
kind of waves it left and right.
Like this picture here.
100%, yes, 100%. So uh, so what I'm trying to say is that when someone wants to donate or like litrom the Torah,
Hmm.
it has to be also there's a specific ritual of bringing it into the synagogue. There's
Hmm.
specific chants. They carry it with the Kohens and the families. But of course, the structure has to be the same as the ones before it in terms of, the structure of where every passage and paragraph ends. For example, Barashit bar Elohim, Shamayim v'Etai, like until he says, like in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, until he says, V'yeh erev v'yeh bekar yom echad, like, and it was night. That is a separate paragraph, right?
Hmm.
I mean,
Right.
that's pretty obvious. But then we have the parashot, so that
Hmm.
also is the same in most cases, really, with the
Right.
Jewish people, which is
So,
it's interesting. So,
So let me ask you a question. For example, in a Jewish Torah, like we saw earlier, the requirement for writing it, for example, requires that essentially what is called a sofer, that he has to take a Torah scroll that's already kosher and use that as his example to like go by. And like you said, for example, in your community, it has to be written by hand. There in the Yemenite community is usually like a wooden stick with a special ink that's made that's used to like transcribe it. The actual like parchment itself is made from like animal skin, and in Jewish halakha, the highest level of that will be called what's called jawil. And jawil essentially is considered to be how Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the Torah, where it's
mm,
written on the hairy side of the skin, for example, and it's considered to be like thicker. It lasts a lot longer. I think they even found that many of the Dead Sea Scrolls were made in this
mm,
same format. Where there's also a secondary method that can be done called klaf. In Taimani, it's called glaf
Klaf,
or
yeah,
klaf in like modern Hebrew. And
right.
that's where they split the skin and then they make it on a thinner layer, for example. Has there ever been a situation like that in the Samaritan community of
The oldest Torah scroll we have, the
mhm,
Abisha scroll, is
mhm,
on basically animal parchment,
mhm,
possibly deer. You
mhm.
know,
Right.
this Torah scroll we believe was written by the third high priest Abisha, the son
Hmm.
of Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, who was the
Hmm.
son of Aaron, right, the
Right.
brother of Moses. And we believe this is a 3,000, more than 3,300 year old Torah
Hmm.
scroll. Uh, But we also have other ones that
Hmm.
are actually kept in the synagogue and sometimes even in other, houses of the Cohen family. I'll give you an example. There's a Torah scroll. I wish I had a picture of, not a scroll, it's a book actually, but still, it's interesting to know that it was written also on an animal parchment, right? I mean,
Hmm.
that's what they had at that time still,
Right.
but it's still the interesting thing about this book is that we rotated it
Hmm.
around the families of the Cohen family every
Hmm.
couple years. So 3 years it will stay in this family. Another
Hmm.
3 years it will be in this family. You have to see it. It's a 750
Interesting.
year old book. It's incredibly beautiful.
Hmm.
But again, we don't have this kosher parchment or kosher material to have. As long as the material is clean and
Hmm.
survives well, that's
Hmm.
okay to use.
Okay, so let's look at another thing here. This is a page that I found. Um, could you read maybe at least the first line here, for example, in the Samaritan dialect? Can you see it very well?
Sure,
I
sure. So
think
let's see. What is this? Okay, so we say أعطت بماكم القادش كي قادش قادشم إي right.
right. Mm-hmm.
وطا نيتن لا وطا نيتن لا كما الشات واتا which means
Wata.
and now
Right.
واتا
No, it's
نيتن لا
a
كما
is it Wata with it's a Aleph here, right?
Aleph. It is Aleph. So you
Right.
mean that if it was
Wata.
ha hey what wata.
Wata. Wata.
I thought that if it ends with Aleph, that's what it would be. That means
Mhm.
you. It says
Right.
here, now I'll give you a shat un aida to raise the sin of the ida. Al kafir alim. Al fani shema. Shema is how we pronounce, of course, yud hey vav hey. We don't
Right.
pronounce yud
Right.
hey
Now,
vav.
question about that. When did that start amongst Samaritans? Because we Jews, for example, we don't try to pronounce the name of the creator of Hashem. We say either Hashem. If we're reading it, for example, in prayer or in officially from a Torah scroll in the synagogue, we say Adonai. Um, so for us, it started somewhere I would say probably around the Second Temple period, where, after the first temple was destroyed, there's a story that there were Kohanim who would no longer say the name of the creator because the generation wasn't worthy at that time. I,
Mm,
I think I think if I remember correctly, in the Samaritan tradition, you guys call it the era of Fanuta or Fanut.
correct. Correct.
Right.
That's what I was about to say. The idea is that there is Yamei Haratzon
Mm-hmm.
Yamei Fanuta. Yamei Haratzon, the days where God was just happy with the 12 tribes. He
Mm-hmm.
was, the Choshen, the 12 stones on the high priest belt,
Mm-hmm.
chest belt, were they were all shining and lighting up. But when
Mm-hmm.
the split happened and they were not aligned anymore,
Mm-hmm.
that's the Yami Fanuta, the days of none, let's say, no Ratzon. How do you say Ratzon
Right. It like
in
saying
English?
I think one way of translating is the divine disfavor.
Exactly.
Right.
And of course, when will those days end? We believe is when our own version of the Mashiach comes
Mm-hmm.
back. So that's
Tahib.
another topic. Ta'ib, we call him
Taib,
exactly.
Taib,
So
right. Yeah. So yeah, so that's why I say I got into this years ago. So that's really interesting. And so just so people who are watching this know, this is strictly from a Torah scroll. So if you were to look at a Samaritan Torah scroll, this is the way it would be written. And again, like the Jewish Torah scroll, you don't see any markings, for example, for vowels. And in just a second, we'll see what Samaritan vowel
mm,
markings look like, and also compare the pronunciation. So I'm gonna go to the next one. So I know you mentioned earlier that you guys don't actually give names to the five books, but just as a kind of a guide for the people who are watching it who are used to the Jewish pronunciation of Bereshit, how would you pronounce this word here in Samaritan?
we say Barashit,
So how would you say this word in Samaritan?
Shemot,
And this word?
ويقرأ,
And this word?
Bammadbar,
And this one?
and the last one is Debarim, إلا الدبارم.
Right. And this is how you would pronounce
Devarim.
what here?
أسفر Torah, Sefer Torah.
Esfarta. Okay. So that's so just so people know, so the Jewish way we would say Bereshit, Shemoth, Vayikro, and Yemenite, of course, but Vayikro, Bamidbar, Debarim. So I've
Right.
always been interested in the differences in the dialect. So
Nice. Yeah.
let's I forgot to go to the part where I highlight. This part of the next part of the conversation, unfortunately, when I did the Zoom, our faces covered up the right side of the screen that you can see here. So I just wanted to make sure that if you're watching the rest of this video, there's a part where I talk about the part of the Torah that we're comparing, and the right side, for example, gets kind of covered up over here. by our faces. So just so you know, when we're talking about it, this is the section we're talking about. The same thing applies to when Abood is talking, that his section over here also gets covered up. So just so you know that at the beginning of when we're talking, when we're showing this, you'll see our faces, that this is the actual part of the slide that is partially missing. It happens on a few other places, but I think this is the most areas where it's most dramatic. So I apologize for that, and hopefully we'll be able to fix that in a future video. Related. Okay, so now what I wanted to do is kind of analyze one of the things about Oral Torah, and I heard you talk about this in another video. Um, One of the ideas amongst Jews, because sometimes I've come across people who will say, "Well, I've never seen anything in the written Torah that explains that there's some kind of oral Torah or Torah Shabbat Peh." And what I've had to often explain to people is the term Torah Sheba'al Peh is a modernized term to describe something that, in ancient times wouldn't have needed that title, for example.
Mm,
By looking at this is a Yemenite Torah scroll, and by looking at it, if there's no vowels, then the first question someone could say is, okay, if I want to teach a child how to read this, do I just take the scroll, put it in front of them, walk away and say, okay, you're on your own, bye? Because obviously that
yeah.
couldn't happen. When as children we learn how to talk orally. We learn from our parents whatever language we're learning orally. So one of the things that's interesting is a rabbi by the name of the Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. He actually explains that the idea of oral Torah is explained in this particular part of the Torah, where it says, "Vayomer Adonai al Moshe aleh alai hahoro, v'hoyo sham va'atano lecho eth haluchot ho'aven v'hatorah v'hamiswo asher kotavti lahorotham." So essentially, the way that, the three elements I want to look at in comparison to the Samaritan Torah is this word here, "atana lacho," I will like give to you, because essentially what it's saying, what Hashem will give to our ancestors. And then here it says luchot ha'evan, and that is tablets of stone, if you want to translate it literally into English. And then the next thing it mentions is Wahatorah, which everybody, I think most people recognize as Torah.
Right.
And then the last thing it mentions is Waha Miswa, or the mitzvah. So this is the one that the Rambam explains that the Torah we know is the written Torah, which is being described here. At that time, when this was being said, of course, the written Torah did exist fully, as it was something that was written before Moshe Rabbeinu died. But it
Mm,
also says HaMitzvah, and the explanation in the Jewish side of things is that this HaMitzvah is the oral element of the Torah, the oral command. And that's the way we look at it, because the way the Vav or Wov here and here are like almost like connections, like nails that connect
mm,
these three ideas together. Now, if we look at from the Samaritan Torah, if you could read this for everyone, please.
beautiful. يا أمر شيما الموشي إلي أرى وبي شمة ويتن لك إتلابوت آبانم التورة ومي صابة إيشر كاتبتي لورو تمة
Okay.
ويا قموش.
So if
Nice.
we break this down, if you could just kind of walk us through this, I'm gonna.
Of course. So يا أمر okay, ويتن لك, you have that. لابوت آبانم. So w- Lebut is like, again, it becomes, the vav becomes bit
B.
in our
Okay.
case. So we
Mm.
say lebut,
Labeled.
almost like lebi. We don't say
Mm-hmm.
levi. We
Mm-hmm.
say libi.
Mm.
Shabat libi. So it's the same as saying lebut.
Mm-hmm.
Abanim is the stones, and we just say, we don't have the ha. We don't
Mm-hmm.
say havanim. We
So it's
say abanim.
Abanim. Okay.
Yes.
So let's stop there for just a second. So if so someone who is hearing this may say, okay, I'm confused. What are we even looking at here? These marks here are the vowels that Samaritans developed. When did these vowels, when were they developed to put into a
So
text?
the exact date I forgot to be. I have to ask, but it's recent.
Okay.
Probably less than 1,000 years ago, even.
Right. Can you give just an idea of what this sounds, this particular mark?
This is U.
Ooh,
So do you see the one that is bigger than it?
right, this one.
That exactly. That's a bigger U.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
so if I want to say Uya Umer, so this one is Uya. If that one in the middle
Mm-hmm.
was a short one,
Mm-hmm.
like the one in the beginning, it would be Uya Umer.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have, that's not even a word that exists. I'm trying to give you something.
Right.
But let's say go to Mushi, for example,
Mushi,
right?
right. Mm-hmm.
So uh, Mushi, can you see this? If I
What's
can
that?
you see my annotation? I don't think you can.
Oh yeah, yeah, I
But
can see
any
it.
you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm trying to say is that when you went with this one, mu, this sign basically,
Mm-hmm.
uh, this one is actually the bigger one. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk. Oops, sorry for that. I'm an amateur with Zoom
I
when
don't
it
worry,
comes.
I'm the same way.
But if it was the small one, it would be mushi.
Mushi.
But oh yeah, but why is it important? I think another nice example to know about this signs is Abram.
Mm-hmm.
Abram, when he was blessed and got that, his name was Abram.
Mm-hmm.
So it the upgrade. Let's say if it went from this one, Abram
Mm-hmm.
just had a small one to
Mm-hmm.
this one, Abram,
Mm-hmm.
right? So ah ah, right?
Right.
And this also applies to this one. There's a small e
Mm-hmm.
and there's a bigger e. So
Mm-hmm.
this one here at the mushi
Mm-hmm.
here,
Right.
this is a mushi. But sometimes I don't know if there's another example here. There's a bigger e. I think one more thing I can tell you that's important
Mm-hmm.
is that we sometimes have those emphasis,
Right. Like where
like
you emphasize,
shema
right.
here.
Shema, right.
Like I can say shem,
Mm-hmm.
and this one combined with this one make it
Mm.
become
Like a
uh
stronger
like a
stress on the
stronger,
right.
exactly, shem,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's shem,
Hmm.
where while if this emphasis wasn't there, it would be of course shem,
Sham. Right.
shama, for example.
Right.
So
Now,
yeah,
one of
these
the
are a
things,
few
just so people
examples.
know, the word we were talking about here that we were stressing was in this is the name of Moses. In Yemenite it's pronounced Moshe, Moshe, where in modern Hebrew is Moshe, for example. Um, so that's the dialectal differences to me are very interesting, but you can see the
Yeah,
basic concept behind all of them. Where I would say Moshe in Yemenite, you would say
we say oh yeah, and Yemenite, what would you say?
Moshe,
Moshe.
like
Okay,
kind of like Moshe.
okay.
So
In
in
Samaritan, we
Samaritan, you'd
say
say
mushi,
Mushi, right.
mushi.
So let's continue with the comparison here because I want to really get into the oral Torah part. So if we continue, you would pronounce that as
At-Tura,
the Torah. And then now what I noticed the difference between the texts, we talked about the 6,000 differences between the Jewish Torah and the Samaritan Torah. The Jewish Torah has a wav here or a vav, where the I see your Torah doesn't have a vav or wav here. So I marked that here that it doesn't have the wav there. So then
right?
the next one, you would have pronounced that.
And one mesab, one mesab.
So the
So the
way
vav
we,
again becomes ba,
interesting.
b,
So we would say that as hamiswo, hamiswo,
hamiswa. Okay,
and you would say that one more time for
one mesab.
hamisobo.
It's a very light ba. It's not
Mm.
a ba, right?
Hmm.
It's a light ba, like a
So that
one
means that
mesab.
there are some situations where, like for example, for us, wall always has the same sound, but it sounds like you guys have two different sounds for this letter. You have like a kind of ba sound and
Uh-huh.
a wa sound, right?
Yes, it can be a wa at the same. Like for example, here in the
Hmm.
beginning of it, like this is wa,
Mm.
one mesab,
Hmm.
right here.
Now,
But
according to Samaritans,
yeah.
what would this, you would also consider this to be like an or, if you will, using modern terminology, an Torah Sheba'al Peh, or an oral Torah, if I understand correctly, right?
Sorry, repeat.
In the Samaritan concept, if you were when you guys read this particular passage, I believe I understood, and I could be wrong. If you correct me if I'm wrong, that your understanding of this word here is that it's talking about an oral element of oral
A hundred
instruction,
percent. Yeah, this is one paragraph I always give to people who ask me if we have oral Torah. I always
right?
give them this passage because it's just the biggest proof
Right.
that God didn't only give Moses some paper in the Torah, right? Like
Hmm.
on Mount Sinai, he taught him
Hmm.
how to teach it and what to teach it and how to pronounce it and all those things, how to keep Shabbat, how
Right. Right.
Otherwise it wouldn't say one misaba at all. It just would have said just
Right.
lebut abanim at Torah,
Right.
right?
And
So.
we'll get to one of the passages that actually proves your point really well in just a second. So if we continue, and we talked about this already, but I think it's also good for people to see the differences in the how the text looks, as well as the pronunciations. We talked about how we would say in the Jewish, at least the Yemenite community, Hamiswo, and I'm gonna have to try to ask you how to say this again in Samaritan.
أم صابة.
Mitsaba.
أم
Mitsaba.
صابة.
Mitsaba. And
And focus that we don't say tsa,
right.
it's just sa.
Sa.
أم صابة.
Amisaba. Okay,
Yes.
interesting. So one question I also have is, for Jews, we consider the ancient Hebrew worked upon a three-letter root system, meaning that the understanding of what a word means comes from, of what was considered to be three-letter roots. And the word hamitzvah for us would come from a three-letter root being sab, sadi, wo, he. As Samaritans, do you have a similar concept of how you understand what words mean? Is it based upon a system of like,
100%. Yeah, for
mm,
sure. We
okay.
have that. And that's my favorite part of the Torah, really.
Mhm. Right,
Like the kind of the etymology, right? Of
right, right. And that's what I think that's the other element of, okay, there's no way to have an understanding of any of these words at all without some kind of oral transmission because the Torah itself doesn't include a dictionary to say, okay, well, these are the words. And also the pronunciation, because as we looked at the earlier scrolls, there's no vowel markings in them. So there's no real way in the Hebrew language to explain to someone the sound. You'd have to actually hear it verbally before you could even
100%.
understand how to even pronounce it.
Correct. Yes.
So let's look at
Yeah, one
another.
of my favorite things, for example, is like, for example, the origin of the word mushi is,
Hmm.
of course, said like ki menamayim mashachti oto, right?
Right.
The word of Yaakov,
Hmm.
because Yaakov had his hand
Hmm.
on the ekev of Ishab on
Akev.
the ankle, right?
Right.
So we
Right.
have those, of course.
Right. So look here, one of the words that we looked at, and this is another of the differences when we say the 6,000 differences between a Jewish text and a Samaritan Torah, um, is the word watano that we saw earlier.
Witena. Mm.
Right. So one of the things I wanted to do, as I said before, is okay, if I took the Jewish Torah and put it into Samaritan Hebrew, this is the way this word would look. It would be, basically Waw, Aleph, Tav, Nun, Hey. And the difference between the texts is the Hey is in the Jewish text, where in the Samaritan text, there's no Hey
Witena.
at the end. Right.
Right. That's an interesting. Oh, sorry. That's an interesting difference as well. Yeah.
Right. And we would pronounce this as Wa'atono, and you would pronounce this here as,
We say. Oh, sorry.
it's okay,
So let's say we say witten.
Wheaten. So we say
Yes.
Wa'atono, you say Wheaten.
Yes. Witten.
Wheaten. Okay. So that's forgot to put that, the mark of the difference in the hay. So then this is the one I found real interesting when you pronounce this one. For us, it's Luhoth.
Okay.
And for Samaritans, you would pronounce this as again,
We say lebut.
Lebut.
Yes.
Lebut. So that means that, okay, right, because the het, as we would pronounce it as het, it doesn't have a sound, and then the
Mm-hmm.
wall here becomes like a ba, like a bit, a ba kind of sound. Lebut.
Right. So this lebut. That's
Lebut.
silent. The last vav is a silent, basically.
Right. Right.
Yes.
It's interesting. Okay, that there and there. Those are the differences. And also
Yep.
for us, we pronounce Luhoth with a symbol like, for example, in modern Hebrew, the last 1,500 years ago, vowel markings were made and they show up here, but in terms of the actual letters, we don't have them here. But we pronounce it in a similar concept, for example.
Mm.
So then the other difference was in the Ho'avan for us, and you would pronounce yours as
Abanim, we say.
Abonim. Okay.
Abanim.
And then the difference being here at the end,
The
where ours
Yudimim.
is Ho'aven and yours is Ha'abin.
Yeah, interesting. Yes.
Right. Okay. So this is another one I just wanted to give a couple more examples. And this is the one I was mentioning earlier when it talks about Moshe Rabbeinu, or Moshe, writing the Torah, where it says he wrote the Torah, but it doesn't say he wrote the mitzvah. So here for in the Yemenite pronunciation would be وَيَخَلُث مَوشَى لِخْتُوف أَثْ دِيفُرِهَا توراه هَزَّوت عَلْ سَفَر عَدَ تُمَوم. So yours, how would you read yours, for
Yeah, we
example?
say ويائك كلو تموشي لكتب إد باري التورة الزيقت على الأسفر عد طامم.
Right. See, that's very nice. I like this is I was excited about trying to put this together so we could read this.
Ah, so well done.
Right. So again, as people sometimes get mixed up and they say, okay, well, there's no written, evidence of oral Torah, but here it only says that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the Torah. It doesn't go back and say he also wrote the mitzvah. So this is like, one good example of, when I looked into this, I was kind of like, okay, that answers the question also. And the idea that this was written in a sefer, for example, a scroll. So until ad tumam,
Atamim.
right? So one of the things I wanted to discuss, I noticed on one of the websites for your community that it discussed some of the things that I would say immediately are like oral Torah, and one of them was shchita. Can you go through and maybe describe some of the things that like I found here on the site that describes how you guys do shchita, for example, in short?
So, first of all, you have to know the way of the slaughtering is actually the same as the Jewish tradition. There's a
Hmm.
specific place to actually, slice in the neck of the animal. That you have to check that you correctly, sliced in a specific way. It has to be a sharp knife in a
Hmm.
specific length. These are things that, people who practice and learn how to slaughter the animal,
Hmm.
the kosher animal, they will know. But what's important to know is why is any other meat other than a Samaritan, like made by a Samaritan, is not kosher for us, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's because even though it's the same slaughtering of the same way the Jewish people slaughter, the reason is because the things we read when we slaughter the animal are different. I mean, I
Right.
haven't practiced myself,
Hmm.
but there basic things like ki b'shem Adonai, these kind of things. These are not read uh, in the Jewish tradition, right?
Hmm.
Maybe
Hmm.
some of them, but it's just different. And also
Right.
the direction of the kurban of
Korban.
the slaughtering of the animal.
Hmm.
When you slaughter the animal, it has to be towards Mount Gerizim. Like your hand,
Hmm.
the knife, the animal, the neck has to be towards Mount Gerizim.
Right. And
So
these
in
are
the
all
Jewish
things that the
practice,
written Torah never specifically dictates.
correct, correct,
Because, for example, as I told somebody once, imagine if, for example, Hashem says, okay, I have to make sure Moshe Rabbeinu writes everything down. I
right,
mean, we're looking at a scroll that's a lot bigger than the ones we currently use. And the other issue would be, okay, well, if 40 years in the desert, obviously the written Torah can't cover every little thing that happened in that 40 years. And obviously, if Moshe, taught someone something, that's Torah. That's an
right.
instruction. Because the word Torah means to instruct. For example, so there'd be no end to the text. It'd almost be
Correct.
impossible. I joked around with a friend of mine once. That'd be like bringing into we have in the synagogue Torah scrolls, you'd have to carry one that's about this big just to get it in the room with all the different things you would need,
100%. Yeah.
yeah, including the
Has to be
dictionary,
something.
including the grammar book, including,
You also have to remember the Torah also mentioned that sometimes you're gonna be facing some situations where you don't know what to do. The Torah
right,
didn't write about it. So what do? You go and ask the Levites
hmm,
from the chosen place, and they will tell you.
right,
Also, "Sha'al avicha v'yagid lecha." That's a
right.
very simple thing. Ask your
וזקניך
father,
גם
and they will
יאמרו
tell
לך.
you. "V'zachenecha v'yamru lecha."